Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let's sing together. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tatho jayamudire Shrunyutam swakatha Krishna punyashravana kirtanam hridayantasto hyabhadrani vidhunoti suhritsatam nashtaprayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Granthraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Thank you, dear devotees, for being present here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam. It gives me an opportunity to purify myself. Please offer a small prayer on my behalf that may the right words come to my mouth at the right time to glorify the Srimad Bhagavatam appropriately. Today we will be reading Canto 1, Chapter 14, verse 34. We had verse 32 and 33 spoken by His Grace Adinath Krishna Prabhu on Sunday, and we will continue from there. Bhagavanapi Govindo
Bhagavanapi Govindo
Brahmanyo Bhaktavatsala
Brahmanyo Bhaktavatsala
Kachit Pure Sudharmayam
Kachipure Sudharmayam
Sukham Aste Suhridvrita
Sukhadaste Suhidvita
Bhagavanapi Govindo
Bhagavanapi Govinda
Brahmanyo Bhaktavatsala
Brahmanyo Bhaktavatsala
Kachit Pure Sudharmayam
Kachipure Sudharmayam
Sukham Aste Suhridvrita
Sukhadaste Suhidvita
Bhagavanapi Govindo 34.
Sorry.
Bhagavan api Govindo
Bhagavanapi Govinda
Brahmanyo Bhaktavatsala
Brahmanyo Bhaktavatsala
Kachit Pure Sudharmayam
Kachipure Sudharmayam
Sukham Aste Suhridvrita.
Sukhamaste Suhridvita.
Word to word translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
word to word. Bhagavan,
Bhagavan,
the personality of Godhead.
the personality of God.
Krishna,
Krishna,
api,
Api,
also. Govinda,
Govinda,
one who enlivens the cows and senses.
one who enlightens the cause and the senses.
Brahmanya,
Brahmanya,
devoted to the devotees or the brahmanas.
devoted to the devotees of Brahmanas.
Bhaktavatsala,
Bhaktavatsala,
affectionate to the devotees.
affectionate to the devotees.
Kachit,
Kachit,
whether.
whether,
Pure,
Pure,
in Dwarkapuri.
in Dwarkapuri.
Sudharmayam,
Sudharmaya,
pious assembly.
Palace Assembly.
Sukham,
Sukham,
happiness.
happiness.
Aste,
Aste,
does enjoy.
does enjoy.
Suhridvritaha,
Subhritrita,
surrounded by friends.
surrounded by friends.
Translation: Is Lord Sri Krishna the Supreme Personality of Godhead who gives pleasure to the cows, the senses, and the brahmanas, who is very affectionate towards his devotees, enjoying the pious assembly at Dwarakapuri, surrounded by friends? Purport: Here in this particular verse, the Lord is described as Bhagavan, Govinda, Brahmanya, and Bhaktavatsala. He is Bhagavan Swayam, or the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, full with all opulences, all power, all knowledge, all beauty, all fame, and all renunciation. No one is equal to or greater than him. He is Govinda because he is the pleasure of the cows and the senses. Those who have purified their senses by the devotional service of the Lord can render unto him real service and thereby derive transcendental pleasure out of such purified senses. Only the impure conditioned living being cannot derive any pleasure from the senses, but being illusioned by false pleasures of the senses, he becomes a servant of the senses. Therefore, we need his protection for our own interest. The Lord is the protector of cows and the Brahmanical culture. A society devoid of cow protection and Brahmanical culture is not under the direct protection of the Lord, just as the prisoners in the jails are not under the protection of the king, but under the protection of a severe agent of the king. Without cow protection and cultivation of the Brahmanical qualities in human society, at least for a section of the members of society, no human civilization can prosper at any length. By Brahminical culture, the development of the dormant qualities of goodness, namely truthfulness, equanimity, sense control, forbearance, simplicity, general knowledge, transcendental knowledge, and firm faith in the Vedic wisdom, one can become a Brahmana and thus see the Lord as he is. And after surpassing the Brahminical perfection, one has to become a devotee of the Lord so that his loving affection in the form of proprietor, master, friend, son, and lover can be transcendently achieved. The stage of a devotee which attracts the transcendental affection of the Lord does not develop unless one has developed the qualities of a Brahman as above mentioned. The Lord is inclined to a Brahman of quality and not of false prestige. Those who are less than a Brahman by qualification cannot establish any relation with the Lord. Just as fire cannot be kindled from the raw earth unless there is wood, although there is a relation between wood and the earth. Since the Lord is all perfect in himself, there could not be any question of his welfare, and Maharaj Yudhishthir refrained from asking this question. He simply inquired about his residential place, Dwarakapuri, where pious men assemble. The Lord stays only where pious men assemble and takes pleasure in their glorifying the supreme truth. Maharaj Yudhishthir was anxious to know about the pious men and their pious acts in the city of Dwaraka. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिधि नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you for attending today's class. Prabhupada talks about two very important topics in today's verse. One is the development of the Brahminical culture and cow protection, and also about how Krishna is Bhakta Vatsala, that he is the protector of, and he's very affectionate towards his devotees. And we will delve a little bit deeper into these 2 points. Before that, Prabhupada talks about Govinda, as in the translation, we see Prabhupada mentioning Govinda. Yeah, Govinda, one who enlivens the cows and the senses. So when we see in the ISKCON society, as we Saffron yesterday, Maharaj was telling about the 4 ashramas and how the highest ashram, the sannyas ashram, and also the notion of being a Goswami or the master of the senses is very important for one to dedicate their entire life to Krishna. Otherwise, they will be what is known as Godas, or they would be a servant of the senses, instead of they being the master of the senses. So there's this notion that the only way we can conquer our senses is by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, because he is Govinda and he is the controller and the master of the senses. And only if he wishes and bestows upon the devotee, a devotee can become Goswami and move from Godas to Goswami. And there's an interesting pastime about how one of the meanings of Govinda is how the Tirupati Balaji is actually the Bala means small child and G means giving out of respect. So when Krishna was born, he was born with a 4-handed form, and then Mother Yashoda asked him to, Mother Devaki asked him to, be like a normal child. So he dropped 2 of the hands. But that form of Krishna as Bal, you could say, in a way, Gopal, when he had the 4 forms, that is who we pray to as Tirupati, as Balaji, as Sri Lakshmi's consort, Balaji. And it is said that he was given the name Govinda because of Agastya Rishi. So the pastime goes in this way. Agastya Rishi has many of his brahmachari disciples, and he has many cows, and he's fostering or he's developing a culture of culture that is centered upon Brahminical qualities and also cow protection. And so what happens is um, the Supreme Lord, like Lord Vishnu, comes to Agastya Rishi and asks him for a cow for performing some sacrifices and also for offering worship. So when he comes, Agastya Rishi says, Agastya Rishi is actually very pleased that he has the darshan of the Supreme Lord. And then he said he's very smart. So he says, he wants the darshan of the Lord again and again. So he tells, if only the master comes, I cannot give the cow. Even the consort has to come. Only if Mother Lakshmi comes along with uh, Lord Vishnu, only then I can give the cow. So then Lord Vishnu says, okay, I will speak with Lakshmi Devi and I will bring her. So he goes. And Agastya Rishi is very pleased. This means he's going to get darshan of the Lord again. So, but the Lord doesn't come back for a few minutes. So Agastya Rishi thinks, okay, I will go to the riverbed, take a shower, offer my Gayatri, and then come back. So he leaves for a few minutes just to be ready when the Lord comes, and he can maybe perform a small sacrifice and then hand over the cow to the Lord. And so what happens is the Lord comes with Lakshmi Devi, but Agastya Rishi is not there yet. So Lord asks the disciples. So Agastya Rishi told me he'll give me a cow. So why don't you give me one of the cows? Any cow should be okay. So all the disciples were like, no, no, no. Without asking Gurudev, we cannot give you any cow. To the Supreme Lord, they're saying this, that without our Gurudev's permission, we will not give you any cows. So the Lord thought, well, that's fair. They're abiding by the Guru's permissions and rules. Okay, I will come back later. So the Lord leaves, and that time Agastya Rishi, at the time the Lord leaves, Agastya Rishi comes back, and then all the disciples tell him the Supreme Lord Vishnu had come. He asked for the cow. We didn't give it to him.
Is Lakshmi there?
Lakshmi is also. And so Agastya Rishi was like, oh no, we have to give the Supreme Lord the cow. And so he takes one of the cows and he goes behind the Lord. He says, Gobu Inda. In Telugu, Gobu means cow, Inda means take. So he keeps calling Gobu Inda. And then he says it 108 times and runs behind the Lord with the cow. And then when the Lord turns back, he tells the way he said Gobu Inda, he kept telling. So he's called as Govinda. That's the one of the other reasons why he is known as Govinda, and that's why Tirupati Balaji is also worshipped as Govinda. And
Everybody says,
Govinda temple. So next time we go, we should probably give a cow in donation, and then say Govinda. So then the Lord may accept it. So this is how the Lord go. There are many poets who have written poetry on Bhakta Vatsala Govinda. That's the name of the poetry, and they have written so many verses. It's very small. You could say a couplet. So it's like two words: Bhakta Vatsala Govinda, Shri Hari Govinda. So, like that, there are many couplets to praise the Lord as Bhakta Vatsala. So in today's purport, Yudhishthir Maharaj is trying to praise the Supreme Lord and calls him Bhakta Vatsala. So we will look a little bit deeper into why that is the case. But before that, one other point that Prabhupada makes in the purport is about uh, those who have purified their senses by dint of devotional service of the Lord can render unto him real service and thereby transcendental pleasure out of such purified senses. So Stephen Covey has this book that's quite famous, and he's also a Mormon preacher. So he has a quote in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, called we see the world not as it is, but as we are. So this is the same point that Radheshyam Prabhu and many of the ISKCON preachers also talk about. They say that we have what is known as Dehatma Chakshu, or we only see in terms of bodily consciousness. But we need to develop what is known as Shastra Chakshu, that is seeing through the lens of the Shastras, seeing every instance or every happenings in our life or in others' life through the lens of Shastra. And this Shastra Chakshu can be developed only through purified senses. So, one thing is, if we see things as it is, then we will actually be very detached from this world. But because we see the world as we are, based on our, at least me, my preconceived notions, and all of my conditioning of the past many lifetimes and also this lifetime, I'm only able to see the world as though I am the, you could say, I'm the main character in this. And I'm able to see as everybody, and God is arranging everything for me. And that is the false notion. That is the Dehatma Chakshu. That is seeing through my bodily consciousness or bodily Chakshu, rather than seeing it in terms of Shastra Chakshu, as the Lord is arranging for every devotee through his unique abilities to engage or dovetail his activities in his service, so that he himself gets ultimate benefit, as Prabhupada mentions here. It's not that Krishna has shortage of servants in the supreme abode, that he comes to the material world and tries to take a servant. It is our good fortune that we are able to offer our service, purify ourselves, and then go and engage in service of the Supreme Lord in the Supreme Abode. So that should be our aim. Another related point from yesterday's class by Swami Bhagwan Maharaj on the deity and devotee topic, he was telling about how the only thing that attracts the Supreme Lord is the character of the devotee. And here we see Prabhupada talking about the Brahminical qualities. He actually says almost the exact same thing. I've highlighted it in my Kindle. So Prabhupada tells that. The Lord is inclined to a Brahmana of quality and not of false prestige. And this is exactly the same point Swami Maharaj mentioned yesterday, that the Lord sees in the character and the Brahmanical qualities that a devotee has developed, and that is what attracts him. In 2 weeks ago, in the time I gave class, we spoke about the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, when it mentioned about the 6 different lakshana or say benefits afforded to anyone performing pure devotion service. We saw Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha, Labhutakrit. We saw all of that. And the last one is called Shri Krishna Akarshani, or attraction of the Supreme Lord and his mercy and his loving glance. And that happens only for someone in the highest stage of love for the Lord. And this attraction can happen only if one has a pure heart, a sincere effort, sincere attempt to attain the Lord, and developing and having that spirit of developing the qualities that one lacks. And only then a devotee can transform himself into being able to attract the attention of the Supreme Lord. Until then, only someone who has already attracted the Supreme Lord can direct his attention to us. So we see the example I had given the other day as well. When we speak to, or when we offer our services to Guru, Gurudev has the power to attract the attention of the Supreme Lord. And he may wish, if he is merciful upon us, he may tell the Supreme Lord, I have a devotee, I have a disciple by name so and so, and he has been serving so sincerely. Like yesterday, Maharaj would have said to Kautukana Prabhu when he was taking on saffron about the immense amount of service you have done to deserve this. And then Maharaj would, in a way, tell Krishna, kind of give you a recommendation to Krishna. And the same way, even in the Supreme Abode, we would try to serve the different gopis in the mood of servant of the servant. And then at some point, Srimati Radharani will notice our service and will tell Krishna that this gopi or this manjari has been serving you really well. And then the glance of the Supreme Lord will fall upon us. So it's the same process that happens even in the Supreme realm. And if we cultivate that practice here, then we would already know what to do when we eventually reach the Supreme Abode. So practice makes perfect. So we would get perfect in that sense. So when we say very affectionate towards his devotees, Bhakta Vatsala means he actually gives immensely, even if a devotee gives a little bit. So this was one of the questions that Yugadish Prabhu had raised 2 weeks ago in the Saturday class. And Maharaj was saying, just consider the Supreme Lord to be, consider Krishna to be the Supreme Lord for a day and give it a shot. So he was just giving like a thought experiment to Yugadish Prabhu. And Maharaj was saying that Maharaj gave 2 examples. He gave the example of Sudama and the example of Putana. So Maharaj said about Sudama carried some chipped rice to the Lord, and he felt reluctant to give it. I mean, he's in the palace. Actually, Sudama was standing outside the gates And then the gatekeepers saw him to be in a very, very ragged, torn clothes, and he looked very poor. And he was telling he wants to meet the king, the supreme lord. I mean, Krishna. And then the gatekeepers were, they thought he's probably, out of his mind. What is he saying? There's no way the supreme lord, or there's no way King Krishna would, come to meet him. So they never allowed him inside. And he pleaded, and finally, when they took him in a, in a rough way, and then when Krishna saw him, Krishna came running outside the palace. He didn't care about any maryada, nothing. He was being offered the best of the best. He moved everything aside and went when Sudama had come. And Sudama had chipped rice in his hand, and he kind of hid it. How can I give it? Very reluctantly and out of humility. But Krishna opened his fist and took it from him and accepted it. And then he gave him immense riches, washed his feet, hugged him, gave him everything that he could possibly give to anybody. And only because he gave chipped rice. But that's what it seems like. But it was because Sudama had given his heart to Krishna. And that friendship and the deep love and affection and the Brahmical qualities he had developed, all of that attracted Krishna to the extent that Krishna thought, what more could I possibly give Sudama? And then he gave himself completely. And the same goes even for Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj had the desire for a palace bigger than Lord Brahma. But the Supreme Lord appeared in front of him, purified that intent. So we see here purified senses. He purified that interest in Dhruva Maharaj, but gave him the Dhruvaloka anyway. He gave him the entire earth to rule over for 36,000 years anyway. So that is what is known as Bhakta Vatsala. He really is affectionate towards his devotees. What to speak of devotees? We have Prahlad Maharaj telling about Manye Dhana Abhijana Rupa Tapa Shruta Ojas Teja Prabhava Bala Paurusha Buddhi Yoga Na Aradhanaya Bhavanti Parasya Pumso Bhaktya Tutosha Bhagavan Gajayutapaya. He says all of these characters, Dhana, Abhijana, Rupa, Tapa, Shruta, Ojas, they don't matter at all. Because if they matter, then why would the Supreme Lord give himself completely to Gajendra, who is an elephant who might not have any of these characteristics at all? The Vidya Gajendrasya Ka, where was Gajendra's knowledge? He had no knowledge of the Supreme Lord. He didn't know Man, Maryada, nothing. He was the king of elephants. He literally had a desire to receive protection from the Lord. It was not as though he gave himself completely to the Lord from the very beginning. He held back so much. He tried his own. When he couldn't, he surrendered himself. Even then, the Supreme Lord was completely willing to give himself away. That is why he is known as Bhakta Vatsala. Talk about Putana. Putana came with the intention of killing the Lord, but the Lord literally gave benefit of doubt to Putana. That's why we have the very famous verse, Aho Bhakyam Sanakala Kutam Jigham Sayapayad Pi Asadvi Lebhe Gatim Dhartrim Uchitam Tatonyam Kim Va Dayalum Sharanam Rajema. Who can be more merciful that I can take shelter of? And that is the real affectionate dealings that Krishna has with not just devotees, not just animals, not even people who are against him. So what to speak if we give ourselves completely in this one lifetime? Then how much would Krishna reciprocate? So Prabhu is taking many steps in that regard, and that is very inspiring to see. So we have a Putana, and then we also have Krishna. Even when someone who is supposed to be his servant makes a mistake, what does Krishna say? Kaunteya pratijanihi na me bhaktya pranashyati. Even if someone falters or makes a mistake, they don't perish because they have given themselves to me completely. And we see that in the case of Bhishma Dev, who we will get to before. I want to also mention about how the two observations that I was able to make in a few past times where the devotees might not have had the best of intentions, but Krishna was still willing to take it. He was like, I will take it. That's what Maharaj was also mentioning. He was willing to take it, whatever was given by the devotees. So we see in the Brahma Vimohan Leela. So actually, Krishna shows something very beautiful in that pastime. So I might have mentioned, and you might already know about it, but I would still like to say it again. So Krishna was enjoying prasadam with his devotee friends, and he like always he would eat the sweets, and then he would do very strange things. He would take from another Gopa's plates. He would take from the mouth of another Gopa and eat it, and then they would share, and then they would throw into each other's mouth, and they would have a lot of fun, and then they would share the prasadam. themselves. And Lord Brahma was very puzzled by what he saw. He got news from his messengers that the Supreme Lord has taken birth to protect Bhudevi. But is this really the Supreme Lord? And that's what Brahma's pride took over him, and he wanted to test the Supreme Lord, and he took away all the cows and calves. And that time, Krishna actually is mentioned in 13th and 15th verses of the I think 13th chapter of the 10th canto of Brahma Vimohan Leela. 14th is Brahma's prayer. So yeah, 13th chapter. So if you look closely at the verses, Shukdev Goswami also makes a point to kind of give a teaser. He leaves the detail but doesn't tell you everything. So he specifically mentions that Krishna has rice in his left hand and he holds on to it. And even though all of his Gopa friends and cows are taken away by Lord Brahma, he has rice in his left hand. So it's actually very strange. I mean, that's a very random detail. Why would Sukadeva Goswami want to keep it? So it's not revealed by any of the acharyas, but except Hari Suri, who mentions it in one of his poetry. He says the Supreme Lord held on to the cooked rice in his left hand because even though there was a crisis in his own life, the cooked rice in Sanskrit, cooked rice means bhakta, and bhakta also means devotees. So the Supreme Lord was going to show that even if there was a crisis in his life, he would never give up the bhakta or the devotees who have taken shelter of his palm. Ashray. Ashray also means palm. Ashray also means shelter. So, but just by holding the rice in his left hand, and it was just you could say it's a passing comment or a very insignificant detail. But Krishna knows that there are acharyas, rasikas, who would see every single detail of everything he did, and they will derive the right meaning from it. And that's why he held on to the rice in his left hand. I mean, he could have just had it in his right hand, but he had it in his left hand to attract the attention of Lord Brahma, because it is not. I understand, and Jesh Prabhu is a left-handed devotee, but it's not maryada to eat with the left hand, according to the you could say not Hari Bhakti Vilas, but according to Vidhi, you're not supposed to eat with the left hand. But he ate with the left hand to attract Lord Brahma's attention. How could the Supreme Lord Vishnu eat with left hand? So he will come down, and then he held on to it to show the world that even if there's a crisis in my own life, I will never give up my devotees. That is why he is known as Bhakta Vatsal. And when Lord Brahma took away all the cows and calves and the gopas, Krishna expanded himself. So we see here as in the line with Supreme Personality of Godhead, full with all opulences, all power, all knowledge, all beauty, all fame and renunciation. He expanded himself as Vilas Vigraha into all of the calves and the gopas, and then he enjoyed the love that the parents gave to their own children. And when the children went back home, they were very radiant and more knowledgeable, and they seemed like they could the parents could love them even more. And the Lord accepted all of that and gave the benefit all of the benefit to Lord Brahma, because Lord Brahma was the one who stole away all the calves and the kopas and gave the opportunity for all of the parents to engage in rasa vatsalya ras with Sri Krishna, and he gave the benefit of all of that to Lord Brahma. And another observation is in the Govardhan Leela. I think we've mentioned it many times. So Lord Indra is, you could say, so intoxicated with pride that there's actually the 5th verse of the chapter where Lord Indra says, he sees Krishna and he scolds him. He says, Vachalam, Balisham, Stabdam, Agya, Panditam Anina. He scolds him. He says, Vachalam, look at him. He keeps talking so much. He's such a talkative, arrogant boy. Vachal, Balisham, he's so childish. He doesn't know how to make decisions. Look at him playing in the mud. Look at him eating mud and so many things. Sabdam, he's so proud. He wouldn't offer obeisances to anybody. He wouldn't offer obeisances to Indra. They wanted to offer prayer. I mean, the worship to Indra. He said, I will not offer obeisances to Indra. We will worship Govardhan instead. Haridasa Varya, Govardhan. And that enraged Indra. Vachalam, Balisham, Stabdam, Agya. Look at him. He has no knowledge. He's speaking in front of his elders. He gave counsel to Nanda Baba and all of the other village elders that we should offer. He gave all of the points why we should offer our worship to Govardhan and not to Indra. Agya Panditaman, he thinks himself to be very learned, and that's what Indra was scolding him. And Mother Saraswati was quivering. How can I take this kind of insult to Lord Indra? And Sridhar Swami writes in his commentary that when Indra said Vachalam, Krishna didn't take it as an insult, as talkative. He took it as though there is so much to speak about him. He took it as a compliment. Balisham, childish? No. But very charming, like childlike. He accepted that. Stabdam, no one offers obeisances because he doesn't offer obeisances because everybody else offers him obeisances. He's the most worshipable deity of among all. Balisham, Stabdam, Agya. Agya means Gya is everything to know. Agya means there is nothing that he does not already know. So, that's the fourth point he took. And Pandita Manina can mean thinks of himself as a Pandit. It could also mean all the Pandits think highly of him. And Krishna gave benefit of doubt to a clear, blatant insult, even the benefit of that to Lord Indra. He took it as a compliment for all of the things that he was scolded for. And what's even better is under the hill, Govardhan Hill, he was where all of the Gopas and Gopis got 24/7 attention of Krishna, and everybody could see Krishna all day long. The problem was the Gopas would have Krishna's association during the day, and then the Gopis would have during the night. So they only had maybe 12, 13 hours each. So the Govardhan pastime was the only time for those 7 days when both of the camps, the Gopas, Gopis, and everybody had 24/7 darshan of Sri Krishna holding the Govardhan hill. And that was only possible due to Indra's arrogance. And even though Indra was, you could say, had malintention of trying to drown all of the Rajavasis, he even wanted some of his, I forget his name, but he wanted them to kill the Rajavasis. Even though he had such malintent, even then Krishna was willing to take the positive from it. He gave all the benefit and the pious credits of getting the association of all the Vrajavasis 24/7 for 7 days. He gave all the pious credits to Indra. So that is how merciful the Supreme Lord is. He's Bhakta Vatsala. To go even further, you could remember what we saw a few chapters before about Bhishma Dev. So Krishna, we also saw about Prahlad Maharaj. The reason Narasimhadev came for Prahlad Maharaj was, as Deva Prabhu was saying, just to prove Satyam Vidhatam Nijavritta Bhashitam. Just to prove the words of Prahlad Maharaj to be true, he came. Narasimhadev could have, just come from anywhere, thrown the chakra, and Hiranyakashipu was dead. But he came specifically from the pillar that Prahlad pointed to. He could have come from anywhere. He could have just come from the door also. But he came from the pillar specifically pointed to by Prahlad Maharaj because Hiranyakashipu was asking him, where is your Lord Hari? Is he within you? Is he in this pillar? And then Prahlad Maharaj says, yes, O greatest of the demons. He's here in this pillar. And then Narasimhadev comes from inside. And when we see how Bhakta Vatsala Govinda comes in his, you could say, most attractive form as Parthasarathi to take, to perform two sides of the pastime. One is to protect Arjuna, and another is to give the worshipable deity for Bhishma Dev to take with him to the next abode, or when we go to the spiritual world. That's as Parthasarathi. That time we see how Krishna really shows how much love he has for his devotees. And that is not just by picking up the wheel, but that's by the descriptions that come before it. And Prabhupada gives such, you could say, aristocratic English in the translations. So he says that when Krishna saw that Bhishma Dev's barrage of arrows is weakening Arjuna, he got off the chariot, and then he saw a broken wheel below, and then he tried to carry it, and then the sun shined on him. It's very cinematic also. The sun shined on him. It looked as though the Sudarshan Chakra was on his head, and he was going to kill Bhishma Dev. And the entire army was all in a standstill. They were like, oh my God, we've come to this day where Bhishma Dev is going to perish. Everybody were like, oh, and everybody were in awe. They just stopped what they were doing. And it was as though time had stopped, and it was like very quiet. And Arjuna was pleading that Krishna had made a promise that he would not fight in the war. But then he's now going to break his own promise. But that's why Krishna is very intelligent. Before itself in the Gita, he said, he didn't make the promise. He told Kaunteya Pratijani. He told Kaunteya, Arjuna, you make the promise that Krishna will never, the devotees will never perish. Then I will keep that promise. because he knew he's going to break the promise soon. And the same thing with Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj said he's here, so Narasimhadev came from there. And then Prabhupada mentions about how the sun shined on him, and when the horses, stomp on the sand would, be thrown over, and that filled Lord Krishna's face. It was ashen with the sand, and that's what Prabhupada says. And then the beads of sweat were like pearls that were, decorating his eyes, and all of that beautiful cinematic descriptions that Prabhupada gives and all the acharyas talk about. And the most important aspect of all of them that we can all take shelter of is the bloodshot red anger in Krishna's eyes. It was far greater than the anger demonstrated by Narasimhadev when he came to vanquish Hiranyakashipu. It is said that when Narasimhadev came, there were like earthquakes and tornadoes and everything. So, in English poetry, it's called an onomatopoeia, where you use words like buzzing of the bee to show how beautiful, or how it's kind of a poetic device used to enhance the experience of listening to poetry. So there's this Shodasha Bahu Narsimashtakam, which means the 16-handed Narsimhadev form who came to, literally tear apart Narsimhadev. He said, Bhukhandam Varanandam Paravara Viratam Dampa Dampuru Dampam Dim 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 Didim Bam Dhammapi Dhammai Jampa Jampaischa Jampai Tulyasta Tulyasta Tulya Dhumaka Dhumaka Dhumakai Kumkumankai Kumankai Etatte Purna Yuktam Harakara Patumam Narsimham. It says Bhukhandam, all the earthquakes, there was a fissure, there was all the bad omens that Hiranyakashipu is going to perish at this point of time. Hiranyakashipu, the one who was so arrogant that he would not bow down to Lord Vishnu, even he, when he saw Narasimhadev, he took a step back, and then he had, you could say, what do you call it, tremor in his heart. Oh my God, what am I seeing? And then Narasimhadev, with his teeth and claws ready to tear into Narasimhadev, he came with that anger. And that same anger, taken even further, was the bloodshot red eyes that Krishna was looking at Bhishma Dev. And Bhishma Dev was even higher. He was so happy. He dropped his weapons. He's like, come on, Parthasarathy, come on. This is what the world needs to see. That even before the war, Bhishma Dev went to Krishna and said, I don't want to fight on the opposite side. But Krishna told him, you fight. You show to the world that even if someone has the greatest ability as Bhishma Dev, if he fights on the wrong side, or if he fights on the side of adharma, he will perish. And Bhishma Dev accepted the Lord's wish, and he fought on the opposite side. But it was only through that pastime, Krishna Bhakta Vatsala, he gave the perfect thing to two devotees. He gave Parthasarathi form, carrying the wheel, which Bhishma Dev took to his next life, just before he passed away. And also the beautiful painting that we have in many ISKCON temples, Krishna carrying it and Arjuna at his feet, trying to stop him. That shows to the devotees that the anger of the Supreme Lord is so much that it demonstrates how much love he has for the devotees. It's not that he has so much anger. His love is so high that he becomes so angry to protect his devotees. And that's why he's known as Bhakta Vatsala Govinda. And there are like infinite pastimes where Krishna has been showing himself as Bhakta Vatsala. And to maybe close or finish off, Krishna is telling that the Lord appears wherever the devotee is singing his pastimes. So there's this beautiful verse in the Narada. I think it's quoted by Madhvacharya, maybe, I'm not sure, but it says, Naham Tishtami Vaikunthe Yoginam Hridayeshu va Yatra Gayanti Madbhakta Tatra Tishtami Narada. So he tells Narada, Lord Vishnu tells, Naham Tishtami Vaikunthe. I don't reside in Vaikuntha. Yoginam Hridayeshu va, not in the hearts of all the yogis. Tatra Yatra Gayanti Madbhakta Tatra Tishtami Narada. Wherever my devotee sings my praises, I reside there. That is what Lord Vishnu himself tells. And that is exactly what Prabhupada is also mentioning here, that the Lord is inclined to the Brahmana of quality and not of false prestige, but also about where he simply inquired about where pious men assemble. The Lord stays only where pious men assemble and takes pleasure in their glorifying the supreme truth. So the Lord always Tishtami, not Vaikuntha, but where the pure devotees. Actually, we are 3 and 3 right now. But overwhelmed by saffron today, and that is where the Lord assembles. So, I would like to close by also mentioning one thing about the word Bhakta Vatsala, and that is in the sixth Lakshana of Sharanagati. It is Anukulisa Sankalpa, Pratikulasya Varjanam, Goptutva Varnam Tatha, Krishna Avesha Rakshibe, Vishwasa Palan, and then Atman Kshepa Karpanye, Shadvila Sharanagati. These are the six Lakshanas of Sharanagati. And Goptutva Varnam, that is accepting Krishna as the only protector and believing or having firm faith that he will protect me. That is Avasha Rakshibe, Vishwasa Palan, Avasha Rakshibe, that's always protecting, having that firm faith that he will protect me when I need it, and Goptutva Varna, and always depending on that, depending on the Supreme Lord. Goptutva is to always depend on the protection of Supreme Lord. These two characteristics are exactly why he is known as Bhakta Vatsala, because one can surrender to the Supreme Lord who will protect, and that is also two of the six. That's 1/3 of the Lakshana of Sharanagati, and that is demonstrated by so many devotees when they knew for sure. Actually, Jadabharat is at another level. They were going to do manslaughter for him, and he didn't bother at all. They took him, the tribal people thought that he has a very well-built body. Let us offer him to the Kali. Actually, not Kali. Who is that? Prabhu? Not Kali. The other, like Tamasic Devata, I forgot.
I don't know.
Okay. So they were going to offer him as, you could say, man sacrifice. And they took him. And he didn't bother at all. At least when Prahlad Maharaj was there, he knew Narsimhadev was going to come for him. And in one sense, he knew that the Lord will protect him. So he didn't feel any fear. Here, he's at another level. He didn't even bother. Whatever the Lord gives me, I will accept. If he wants to kill me, okay. If he wants to protect me, that is also fine. He was so aloof. That is why Jad Bharat and Maharaj Raghuna's speech in the 5th canto, 14th, 15th chapters are so important, because Jad Bharat was at another level, and it's very hard to replicate that. But he goes to show that the Lord shows that he will really protect his devotees if they sincerely practice and give their everything to him. I would like to close by saying that we were talking about Nam and Pranam a few weeks ago, and the way we offer our worship also is important. So when we offer obeisances, there are two things that we must look into. At least this is what I learned recently. All of you might already know it. It is that when you have your hands outstretched with palms closed, you are telling the Lord that I have nothing to give you because I'm so impure, but please accept me completely. And when you have your feet close together, not open, sometimes we offer our feet this open, but if we close it, we tell the Lord that I have no other way to go. Like there are no other, like Sankhya Yoga, or no other path that can take me to you. You are my only path. So we kind of have a closed hexagon, or you could say a quadrilateral, where our hands are also closed and our feet are also closed behind. And that is, when we offer that obeisances, we can also meditate upon what we are trying to demonstrate to the Lord, that I have nothing to give you because I am akinchana. And agati. Agati means I have no other path or place to go to. That's why I'm offering myself completely to you. And that is also one of the lakshana of Sharanagati, that we tell the Lord, we have nothing other than you. With that, I would like to close today's class. Thank you very much for listening. I would like to welcome corrections, and if you have any reflections. Thank you.
About the hands, when Prabhupada was in Calcutta temple, and devotees were in arti, and they were standing like they were standing with their hands behind them. And Prabhupada saw it, he went behind them, slapping their hands. He went behind them, he slapped their hands. He said, "This is not how you stand before the Lord." He said, "The best, the hands are important, especially in art." He said, "The best way is actually the higher, the better." Like what they've done. And then As Maharaj was saying the other day, this is the best mudra.
Mm.
And then so this is the best in here, and then well, this is I guess this is a lot of boys do this is a little, but like this, but this is like, and then sometimes I see the boys like this. This is also not guaranteed in front of the Lord. So this is like not acceptable, and this is also really bad. So this is the best in here, and then where the hands are is really important. So pretty much tells where our consciousness is. A good class, thank you.
True, I have a question. In the Purport, Prabhupada mentions that any society which does not follow cow protection and Brahmanical culture, they cannot progress at any length. But we see in the Western civilization, they are progressing in terms of economic advancement. Prabhupada also many times says West has so much facility, you don't have any lack of anything, so you should cooperate and get this spiritual knowledge. He gives analogy blind man and a lame man. So he says that West doesn't have eyes because they don't have spiritual vision, and East or India they don't have legs because they don't have affluence. So you should cooperate with each other, and then see through the eyes of Shastra and walk through the affluence of the West. So here, how do we understand that statement from the purport?
That's actually quite difficult, Prabhu. So whatever you, no, it's like
We can
yeah,
we should
I removed it.
see you
Oh,
also.
see. Okay. So as far as it's probably an incomplete answer, but no, everybody's audio would be the same. So the way I at least I understand it is because the fruitive activities that anybody has performed has been accumulating for many lifetimes, and they're just getting the fruit of their activity now. Earlier, the Indian economy was the greatest. Then it was plundered. Then it became Britain. Then now it might be USA. So it's always changing because we are born in a certain period of time. It's actually very minute. It will in the past 100 years, the wealth has shifted, right, from one to another. So it's a very small lifetime in which the pious credits that somebody has performed, they're getting the fruits of it. But the way Prabhupada said it was to get the best of both worlds. But actually, what's happening is there's wealth increasing in India and the spiritual culture is declining. So the opposite effect can also happen. And one interesting thing that Prabhupada mentions here is he even mentions even if there's a part that cultivates. So let me see. Without cow protection, cultivation of the Brahminical qualities. Yeah, he says, at least for a section of the members of society, no human civilization can prosper at any level. So he mentions that if there is no Brahminical culture and cow protection at all, then that is a doomed civilization. But even if at least for a section of the members, if there is like maybe ISKCON, it could be Gaudiya Math, it could be it might not be the same principle, but if they all believe in, even if parts and are there, then it will still progress. But that doesn't mean the economy of the US is infallible. It could all fall apart. If AI goes, then the whole US economy is gone. So anything could happen. At least that is my understanding.
Prabhupada said that the reason America is so good is because from all the currency they have in God we trust.
Yeah, exactly.
And now the atheists are trying to take that out. So let's see what happens with their success.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Online? Any devotees? We can take one more reflection. Is anyone speaking?
Oh. Samdar Prabhu was saying something. Okay. The Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you for joining, devotees.